All right, we're back with another college football 2019 preview and prediction. After going into the Pac-12 yesterday and previewing the Washington Huskies, we're going to jump into the Big Ten today. Yesterday's video on Washington had 132 likes. That's pretty good, but I know you guys can do better. If this one gets to 232, so 100 more, I'm going to call Dish Network today about the ACC network. A lot of you saw my post from yesterday, but I looked it up yesterday. The ACC network, I wanted to know when it started and all that kind of stuff. I have Dish Network. I used to have DirecTV. You guys have seen the videos, most of you have, of when the SEC network was launching and DirecTV wasn't going to cover it, and I called DirecTV and argued with them. And anyway, a lot of you liked those videos. If this video gets to 232 likes today, I'm going to call my current TV provider, which is Dish Network, and ask them about the ACC network, which as of right now, they do not have a contract to carry the ACC network. So hit the thumbs up on this video and let's get started with the Michigan State Spartans. Hey, good morning, it's Uncle Lou here. Yeah, that's right, it's me, Uncle Lou, and I'm live for you on LouTube today, so thanks for watching. You know, I really appreciate it also, and too, in addition to that as well, subscribe to this channel if you're not already. I post college football videos almost every single day of the year, and some of them are even watchable, and to be honest, the majority of these previews that we've done, I think are pretty watchable, and according to the views and the thumbs up in the comments, it looks like most of you agree, which is great news. We're going to do the Michigan State Spartans today out of the Big Ten. I've done a few Big Ten teams already. I've done Michigan. I've done Wisconsin. I've done Nebraska. That may be the three that I've done from there. We're going to do Michigan State today. Let's go. Well, Michigan State was a weird team in 2018, weren't they? They had a lot of expectations heading into the 2018 season. Not just them themselves, but outside expectations too. The media, a lot of college football fans were expecting a really good season from Michigan State. They had a ton of starters returning from their team in 2017. Everyone knew they were going to have a pretty good defense, didn't know how good it was going to be, and they liked what they had on offense, and they were poised for yet another 10-win season under Mark D'Antonio, which is becoming the norm at Michigan State with him at head coach. The wheels completely fell off at Michigan State last year, didn't they? You know, when you talk about the teams that were the most disappointing last year, the teams that had the worst record at the end of the year compared to what most people thought they were going to do at the beginning of the year, you have to put Michigan State into that list. I think you're talking about teams like Southern Cal, who went 5-7. Florida State, of course, who went 5-7. Some disappointing seasons there in relation to preseason expectations. Michigan State, I think, has to fall into that same category. They went 7-5 in the regular season, so not quite as bad as the other two, but again, pretty high expectations there considering all the starters they had returning. Their schedule looked manageable, and it just completely fell apart, and we're going to talk about why here in a second. But 7-5 in the regular season, 5-4 in the Big Ten, 7-6 after a bowl game loss to Oregon. Listen to these losses, though. Here's the teams you lost to: Arizona State, Northwestern, Michigan, Ohio State, Nebraska, and Oregon. Now, Northwestern ended up being a pretty good team. Northwestern is a team kind of like Michigan State. Never really elite, although Michigan State has had one or two elite years. But Northwestern seems to come out of almost nowhere every couple of years and put a real good season together. Last year was one of those years. So not all that embarrassing to lose to Northwestern. Arizona State, that's hard to understand. They weren't a very good team last year. They hovered around 500. They had a new head coach and coaching staff, and the Pac-12 overall just not that good. That was a little bit surprising. The Nebraska loss, they were a terrible team for the first half of the year for sure. Second half of the year, they did get a little bit better, but you lost to them. And then, of course, Oregon in the Redbox Bowl. But what was the problem? Well, two things. Well, they're all related to one thing, really. The problem was offense and injuries. Listen, everybody has 85 scholarships, and you hear this next man up thing all the time. And while there is some truth to that, if you're talking about a couple of injuries, this is crazy what happened here to Michigan State. I'm going to talk about the injuries in a minute, but let me talk about the offense. The offense is what cost Michigan State all these games, not the defense. You lost to Arizona State, you scored 13 points. You lost to Northwestern, you scored 19. You lost to Michigan, you scored 7. You lost to Ohio State, you scored 6. You lost to Nebraska, you scored 6. And you lost to Oregon, you scored 6 points. Okay, the last 6 games of the year for Michigan State, when the injuries started piling up, you scored 13, 3, 6, 6, 10, and 6. You still won 2 of those games. In fact, you might have won 3 of them. Anyway, you won 2 of them for sure. You might have won 3. Anyway, it doesn't matter. The point is, basically, offense was non-existent last year. Injuries, again, I get the whole next man up thing, but just listen to this. 10 offensive starters for Michigan State were injured at some point during the season and missed some amount of time. Total of those, for those 10 starters, total, they missed 48 games. That's an average of 4 or 5 games per player that was hurt, that they missed a quarter, almost a half of the season. Missed by a total of 10 different starters. Just insane. Starting quarterback injured in week 6, I think it was. Probably your best win of the season against Penn State. He gets injured, a shoulder injury. Now, he tried to play through the pain some the last half of the season. You could tell he wasn't the same quarterback. He's a mobile quarterback, and it's not like a shoulder injury prevents you from running, but he either was told or mentally just made a decision not to run around and scramble as much, and you just could tell in the second half of the season. And the arm strength just wasn't there the second half of the season as a direct result of the shoulder injury, and he just wasn't the same even though he tried to play through the pain. Probably the best or one of the best players on the entire offense, running back L.J. Scott, he was hurt. He missed 8 games. So you had a ton of offensive players miss. 2 of your best offensive players were injured, your quarterback and your running back. So while I normally don't buy into injury excuses for why a team sort of falls off, this number of injuries to this many starters on one side of the ball, and then you look at Michigan State's games last year and how they lost those games. I mean, you're giving up 16 points to Arizona State and losing. You're giving up 21 points to Michigan and losing. You're giving up 9 points to Nebraska and losing. You're giving up 7 points to Oregon. Oregon is a good offensive team. You give up 7 points to Oregon and lose. So you can draw a direct line from Michigan State's offensive injuries in 2018 to their record at the end of the season. Again, I know 85 Schollies, next man up. This is a ton of injuries. Even if you're a Michigan fan and you hate Michigan State, put yourself in their shoes. There's hardly a team in America that could go through this injury list and perform as expected over the course of the year. So anyway, the good news is most of those guys are healthy and return now for 2019. Not L.J. Scott. He's gone. He's out of eligibility. But, well, we'll talk about the offense. You bring in a new offensive coordinator, Brad Salem, is that his name? He's doing away with Michigan State's offense that they've had under D'Antonio for what seems like forever, right? A slow offense, staying in the huddles, which you rarely see anymore. Michigan State huddles all the time. 2 running backs, a halfback, fullback, or 2 split backs. All that is gone. He's bringing in more of the up-tempo, 1 running back style of offense that you tend to see in most of college football nowadays, doing away with the second running back, the fullback. And, you don't have to have a 2 running back system with a fullback to be successful at running the ball anymore in college football. You take 2 of the best running teams in America, Georgia and Clemson. Neither one hardly ever play a fullback. In fact, since Georgia hired Kirby Smart back in 2016, we haven't signed a single fullback. Now, yes, on goal line situations and things like that, short yardage, 3rd and 1 on occasion, we have packages where we will line up with a fullback. But the point is, you're seeing less and less of this 2-back system in college football, and Michigan State is sort of finally taking that leap to modern times and doing away with that with this new offensive coordinator hire, Brad Salem. Quarterback, senior, 5th year, Lewerke, isn't that his name? Injury last year really slowed him down. We talked about that, but he's back to 100% now. Shoulder completely healed. Arm strength is fine. Everything is fine. I expect to see more of the quarterback that we saw sort of the first half of the season and the season before versus the quarterback that we saw the last half of the season that just honestly looked like a shell of his former self. The mobility was gone. The arm strength was gone. All that is back now. Wide receivers, you return your three of your top wide receivers from last year, White, Stewart Jr., and Naylor, all three of which missed time last year with injury. So again, you're seeing a pattern here as to why Michigan State was 7-5 last year in the regular season. Running back is going to be the biggest question mark for me about Michigan State's offense this year, other than can they stay healthy? Obviously, 10 injuries is, you got to avoid that. No team can overcome that. So injuries, and then the running back situation. You lose L.J. Scott. He's been your best running back for a while. He's gone. You have this guy, Hayward. Played a lot last year. I think he had about 500 yards rushing, 5 or 6 touchdowns. He's not a game-breaking running back, though. He's not a true upper echelon #1 running back. Now, he's been around for a while. You know what you're getting from him. He's dependable, all that kind of stuff. But you got to find somebody, I think, that's a little bit better than him. I still think Hayward will play a lot because he's so experienced, but you're going to have somebody that hopefully can give that running back room a spark. Who could that be? Well, you got Ladarius Jefferson. I don't know how good he can be, really. I'm not very optimistic. Your best hope, I think, is for a couple of freshmen that you have maybe playing above what most recruiting services thought they would play above, right? And end up having a pretty good season. Collins and Williams Jr. You need one of those three guys, either the Jefferson or one of those two freshmen, need to play better, I think, than what most people think they're going to play. I don't really see Hayward taking some huge leap forward all of a sudden. You sort of know what he is by now. The other three, you got to hope they get better. I think you need help at the running back situation. Offensive line, injuries again. Listen to this. You had 9 different starting lineups on the offensive line last year. You only played 13 games. So that means only 4 times did you have the same group of 5 offensive linemen start a game last year. 9 times it was a different mishmash of whoever happened to be healthy enough to play in that given week. That's the bad news. The good news is now this year you have 7 returning offensive linemen that have starting experience. So you're going to have to pick the best 5 of those 7, line them up, and again, hope for no injuries. You got a new offensive line coach, and he's really emphasized to the offensive line to try to gain some weight. You had a little bit of an undersized offensive line last year, had a problem really pushing defensive lines back, especially in short yardage situation. Michigan State's offensive line even got beat in double team situations a lot of times, where 1-on-2 and a defensive line was a lineman for an opposing team was beating 2 of the offensive linemen. So new OL coach, offensive line gained some weight. We'll see if it works. Now, as bad as the offense was last year, the exact opposite for the defense. One of the best defenses in the Big Ten. That includes defenses like Michigan and whoever else you want to name. #1 in America in rush defense last year, and you return almost your entire defensive front. Good luck running the ball against Michigan State this year. Your defensive tackles are absolutely elite. Williams, and I can't pronounce this other guy's name. It looks like a weird version of the word Panasonic, but it's like Panasuik or something. I don't name these players, but still, please keep pointing out in the comment section every time I mispronounce someone's name who's purposely spelled it as hard as they possibly can. Thank you. Appreciate that. Defensive end, again here, Willekes, I don't know. He was going to go to the NFL. He had a great season last year, but he broke his leg in the bowl game, and he made the decision to return to Michigan State for 1 more year. Sucks for him, right? You like to see players succeed and make it to the NFL. Sucks for him. Great for Michigan State, though. He comes back. Tackles for loss last year, he led the Big Ten in tackles for loss at 20.5. You also get linebacker Bachi, first team all Big Ten. Thompson's back at the linebacker position. Defensive back, Josiah Scott. D'Antonio has a history of putting elite defensive backs into the NFL. If you guys remember the playoff run that Michigan State made a few years ago under D'Antonio, that particular year they had probably the best secondary in all of college football. I'm not saying they're going to have the best secondary in all of college football this year, but it's getting closer to that than what they've had the last couple of years, and this Josiah Scott is a big reason why. Safety, Dial, 2-time all Big Ten. So the defense is going to be absolutely loaded again. Wouldn't surprise me at all to see Michigan State have the best defense in the Big Ten this year. If the offense can stay healthy, if Lewerke can play up to his capability, if you can figure something out at the running back situation, because I think you're okay at wide receiver. You need to find a deep threat maybe out of those 3 that I named, or a young guy needs to step up. But I like your wide receiver situation. I like your quarterback situation. and your O-line, like we mentioned, returning 7 different players who had starts last year. You know, they have the potential is here to have a pretty good offense, and it can't get any worse. Let's just be real. It can't get any worse than it was last year. It's seeing Mark D'Antonio go 7-5 is really, really weird. He's been there this is 12 years, I guess now. He's won 10 or more games, 6 of those times. Michigan State has 85 wins since 2010, which is 3rd in the Big Ten, 11th in America. So they're used to winning a lot of games, not used to these 7-5, not used to these 7-5 seasons here. 117th in total offense last year. Again, I think you can draw a line directly from the injuries to this 117 rating. I don't think it'll be anywhere near that this year. All right, let's put the schedule up on the screen and try to figure out exactly how good Michigan State can be last year. Here's the screen from the end of last year's Michigan State preview. I always put this up so we can see how right or wrong I was. And you know, if I was wrong, you guys can laugh at me. And if I was right, I can brag. 10-2. Oh, man. So this is probably one of the teams I was the furthest off on, right? Other than, like I mentioned, Southern Cal and Florida State, because these 3 teams are probably the 3 most disappointing teams from 2018. I don't feel that bad about picking Michigan State to go 10-2 and then watching them go 7-5. Again, nobody saw these injuries coming, and there's not a single team in America who could have lived up to preseason expectations, suffering the amount of injuries that Michigan State did to the positions that Michigan State did. They just couldn't have did it. So yeah, I was way off, but everyone who had a Michigan State prediction last year was way off. No one saw these injuries coming. So, but anyway, here's this year's schedule, and we'll see what you can do. You start off a Friday game. So you got week 0 on August 24th, right? And then week 1 is technically August 31st, but we have a whole weekend of games actually starting on Thursday with a Clemson Georgia Tech game. Stay tuned later for that ACC call I'm going to do to Dish Network if this video gets 232 likes, because that Georgia Tech Clemson game is on the ACC network. But anyway, you play Friday, August 30th, so you understand what I'm saying. Home game against Tulsa. Tulsa's not as good today, in my opinion, as they were a few years ago. They had a high-flying offense where they were scoring a bunch of points. I don't think they're that good anymore. Well, I don't want to say they're not that good. They're not that good compared to what they were then. I think you get a win at home against Tulsa. Again, you lost some of these home games last year to inferior teams because of injuries. I don't see that happening this year, especially week 1. I think you'll roll against Tulsa. Western Michigan, they bring in the Shark Humper Jim McElwain, right? Fired from Florida a couple of seasons ago. Won 2 division titles at Florida. Did you know that? Jim McElwain was at Florida for 3 seasons, won 2 division titles. Jim McElwain was a head coach in the SEC for a total of 3 years, and 66.66% of the time, he won the division. Current head coach Dan Mullet has been an SEC head coach for 9 years and has never won a division. But you fire Jim McElwain because he had 1 bad season. He goes, where was he at? Was he at Michigan? I think he was at Michigan last year. Anyway, it doesn't matter now as an assistant. Now he's head coach at Western Michigan. Doesn't matter. Talent-wise, they don't have any business competing with you. Although I do think Western Michigan is a good team for the conference that they're in. But you get them at home. I think you get another win there. You start off at 2-0. Week 3, your first Power 5 game still in the non-conference. The second end of the home and home you had with Arizona State. Played there last year, lost 16-13. So again, typical story from last year. Defense plays pretty good, holding Arizona State to 16 points. Offense can't get out of its own way. You lose 16-13. That will not be the case this year. I think you'll hold Arizona State under 20 points again. Arizona State was a little bit better last year than what I thought they would be. Part of the reason why is because they beat you. I had them picked to lose to you. But anyway, I digress and regress too. They have an iffy at best head coach situation with Herm Edwards down there, a hire that I still don't understand. But anyway, that's not the point of this video. I think you beat them at home this year. I think you'll hold them. Like I said, last year you gave up 16 to them and lost. I can see you giving up about the same number of points to them this year, but you're going to score closer to 30, I think. I think you win that game fairly easily, and you're 3-0. Now your conference schedule starts on the road with a pretty tough game here. Northwestern, they're from the other side of the division. They're from the Big Ten West, which is considered the weaker of the 2 divisions, although Nebraska's trying to change that, right? Anyway, none of that matters, does it? No, it doesn't. On the road at Northwestern, I'm going to be completely honest with you. Here's how I do these videos. I write this year's schedule down. That's the first thing I do before I look anything up, before I do any research, before any of that. I look at the schedule, and I sort of make a rough draft, wins and losses, who I think you'll beat and who I think you'll lose to. When I did that, I had you losing on the road at Northwestern. Then I start my research on the team. I found, I knew you had some injuries last year. I didn't know it was this bad. I knew you had a good defense last year. I didn't know it was this good. I went back and changed you from a loss on the road at Northwestern to a win on the road at Northwestern. But I'm telling you right now, I still think this will be a close game. Northwestern is a very well-coached team. They've got above-average talent in some key positions. They don't recruit at the level of a Michigan or Ohio State or Penn State or even a Michigan State. But again, they get the most out of what they have available every single year. So I'm going to give you a win there against Northwestern, but I think that's a dangerous game. And, if I was doing like these toss-up things like I used to do before people got so mad about it, I would list Northwestern as a possible toss-up game. You play them there. I think it's going to be a difficult game. I'm giving you the win, though. You're 4-0. Then you come back home, play Indiana. People forget they even have a team. It's getting to be that way in basketball, too. But anyway, you'll beat them without a problem. You're sitting at 5-0 at the end of the first month of the college football season, heading into October, undefeated. On the road, back-to-back weeks, Ohio State and Wisconsin. It would be hard to find two harder road games back-to-back in the Big Ten. Maybe if you were playing at Michigan instead of at Wisconsin, you could say that might be a little bit more difficult. But these are both two pretty good teams, both with really good home field advantages and really loud home field environments. I think you drop both of those games. You're a good team. Especially, I think you match up well, especially against Wisconsin. If Wisconsin's not able to find something offensively this year, you could win that game by a couple of scores. There's a lot of question marks about Wisconsin this year. I'll be the first to admit it. But I think you lose. I think they get a big win. This will probably be one of Wisconsin's biggest wins of the year, maybe the biggest. But again, with the Northwestern game and the Wisconsin game, I used to have a toss-up category. People got mad. These two games would be a toss-up to me, where it would not surprise me. If I wake up after the Northwestern game and you won, I'm not surprised. If I wake up and you lost, I'm not surprised. Same thing for Wisconsin. So I have you splitting those two games, at Northwestern a win, at Wisconsin a loss. This is just really, really difficult on the road at Ohio State, and then the very next week on the road at Wisconsin. That's just a tough spot on the schedule for you. The good news is you get your first of two bye weeks right after that, before you come back home and play a Penn State team that, to me, is in a transitional period right now. I don't think they're going to be terrible. I don't think Penn State is the type of team that's going to go through any sort of rebuilding, but it is going to be sort of a transitional year. New quarterback, new running back, lots of question marks on the offense and defense, really. You get them at home. It's sandwiched between two bye weeks. I think you get the win, another pretty big win for you at home against Penn State. Second bye week comes after that. You'd like to have these bye weeks spread out a little bit more. Man, if you could have one of these bye weeks between the Ohio State and Wisconsin game, I think that would give you a much better chance to win at Wisconsin. Two bye weeks in a 3-week period is not ideal, just be honest. But that's how schedule sets up for you. Come out of your second bye week, you get a home game against Illinois. Indiana loves Illinois because that's the only school, really, that more people forget exists in the Big Ten than Indiana. You ask 100 college football teams to name all the teams in the Big Ten, about 90 of them are going to leave Illinois off, and they'll be sitting there scratching their head trying to remember who the last team is that they can't think of. Hello, McFly, it's Illinois! Yeah, but don't feel bad, no one knows. On the road at Michigan, loss. You guys, especially if you've been around this channel for a while, for whatever reason, I'm way too high on Michigan every single year, and then I get let down and disappointed and made to look a fool by their performance on the field, especially in big games or against Ohio State or in bowl games. Well, I'm a glutton for punishment, I guess, because I'm doing the same thing again this year. I think Michigan is the cream of the crop in the Big Ten. You got to play them on the road. I know it's a rivalry game, an in-state thing. Harbaugh's got over the hump with the Michigan State hurdle. Next on his list, Ohio State and winning a division. We'll see if that can happen this year, but I think he continues to trend against Michigan State. I think he beats you at home, Harbaugh does, and you catch another loss. On the road at Rutgers, win. Shout out to Comic Dude, huge Rutgers fan. He's in the band, so this guy travels, gets to see all the games. I'm not very high on Rutgers, especially compared to Michigan State. I know it's at Rutgers. Talked about Ohio State and Wisconsin having two of the best home field advantages in the Big Ten. No home field advantage at Rutgers, I'm sorry, other than the band, which is absolutely amazing. Comic Dude, probably the best band in the Big Ten. But other than that, not much to see on the field when Rutgers puts a team out there. I think you'll win there without a problem. Maryland. Maryland's an interesting team this year. You get Maryland at home. There's some people that are pretty high on Maryland. And by high on Maryland, I mean could win 8 or 9 games, possibly 10 with a bowl win. I'm not so sure they're going to be able to live up to that hype. But I've heard from a lot of people in the call-in show that we do all year long. I've been hearing in the offseason, don't sleep on Maryland. They're putting a good team together. I'll take their word for it. They live in Big Ten country. I don't. But I'm going to have to see Maryland win some big games before I fully believe that. I think you win at home against Maryland. All right, so when I initially went through this schedule without doing research, I had you at 8-4, which would have been a couple of game improvement over last year, or a 1-game improvement. After doing the research and everything, I think you can get to 9 wins this year, and that's where I have you coming down at 9-3. I do not think 9-3 will be good enough to win the division. But we'll see. But 9-3, big improvement over last year. Offense got to stay healthy. Quarterback got to play up to his potential. Got to find a running back. If you can do that on offense, maybe you go 10-2 because this defense is absolutely elite. One of the best 5 or 10 defenses in all of America. Could be the best defense in the Big Ten for sure. Definitely the best front in the Big Ten. This is a legitimate defense here. You're going to hold a lot of teams under 20 points, I think. So there it is. I got you at 9-3. I do think it's possible if you catch a couple of breaks. Maybe some of these teams aren't as good as we think right now. Do you think it's possible you could go 10-2? It's also possible, though, you could go 8-4 again. But I'm going to settle on 9-3. The 3 losses being on the road to Ohio State and Wisconsin and on the road at Michigan. Anyway, that's it. Michigan State Spartans preview. I appreciate you guys watching and have a great morning.